A game that teaches you how to control a bunch of dead things? Maybe my enthusiasm for life and motivation are in there somewhere. In today's humble opinion, we're jogging for noggins in Zombie Night Terror. You know those feelings you had as a kid where you wanted to pursue some sort of vocation up until you learned how much effort it really was? This game is like that for aspiring zombie viruses. We usually get to see the glamorized fruits of a virus's labor, but very rarely do we get the opportunity to appreciate exactly how much work and dedication it had to leverage just to take out a simple 2-story building, much less infect an entire city. So this is a great game to play if you're under the delusion that you're just going to wiggle your way into the nostril of some poor patient zero, hop into his or her bloodstream, and call it a night. Outbreaks take work and planning, and experiences like this will help you to appreciate that. A lot of people would call Zombie Night Terror either a puzzle or a strategy game, but I don't think either of those really fit except in the loosest sense of the words. Every game requires problem solving, but that hardly qualifies them as puzzles, and many require some sort of planning, but that doesn't make them strategy games. I'd personally say that the infuriating piece of shit genre suits it just fine, but then I'd feel bad about it in a few months because I'd realize that I'm just projecting and frustrated by my own lack of mastery. However, I would say that flow control would be a much more fitting genre since at its core that's exactly what it is. You're directing a horde of zombies through a map while selecting certain actions at key moments in order to redirect them when necessary. Sometimes you need to slow the flow, others you need to speed it up, and sometimes you even need to split it. But at the end of the day, it's all about that flow. Lose sight of it and you're bound to waste some of your much needed resources. Levels in which you're allowed to view the game through that lens are where the game's identity is at its strongest. You feel as if the horde is an extension of your will and you can wield it with cold calculation and efficiency. This is also coincidentally when it's at its most fun, especially once you develop an understanding of its mechanics. Unfortunately, that's not all the game attempts to be. One of the game's weaknesses, though not an outright flaw, is its trial and error nature when it comes to pacing. On the one hand, it adds some difficulty to the game by removing some handholding from the formula, but on the other, it introduces some areas of frustrating recursiveness, particularly where there are challenges involved. For instance, in this level, in which the challenge is to kill all humans, there are plenty of opportunities to just miss your chance at killing them, which is easy to do given that the methods through which you can kill them aren't expressed, leaving you to not only restart the level again and again, but requiring you to do so with the same obsessive meticulousness that you had to exhibit the first time. Then having to figure out that you can infect people with exploded zombie particulate, and that you can explode zombies mid-fall. Ideas that wouldn't come to you on the first 10 playthroughs of the same level, if they did at all. Where the weakness becomes a flaw is attaching that frustration to a time requirement. Challenges should line up with the player's intrinsic desires. Killing every human on a level while frustrating is exactly what the player playing a zombie horde management game wants. It's what the combination of zombie fantasy and darkness of the human heart entails. You give me control over the zombies, I lay waste to everything. But I wouldn't say that this is the sort of game where I would want a speedrunning element. A game that is for the most part slow, deliberate, and requires observation does not benefit from time challenges. I want to experiment with my powers and figure out the most fun way to kill as many things as possible, not be forced to find the most efficient way to do it. Not only does that lobotomize my enjoyment of the game, it works against its own nature and melts horribly with that already frustrating recursive loop that is trial and error. Nothing like replaying an entire level that requires intricate execution for the 99th time just because you missed a click near the end and were a millisecond off from completing the challenge. Of course, you don't need to beat the challenge to continue playing through the game, but I mean, come on. How can you look at a challenge and not have to compulsively complete it? I know for a fact that I'm not the only one that knows the difference between needing to finish something and needing to finish something. I'm pretty sure completionism is a huge part of video game culture. All in all, though, Zombie Night Terror earns an 8 out of 10 because despite its rather generic and unassuming name, the developers have actually given the game a lot of thought, which is evidenced by how tightly you have to manage your resources in order to beat each level and how challenging that can be despite the constant introduction of new ideas and dangers. Sure, it might have a little too much repetition that weighs down your playtime and artificially inflates the difficulty by making you do everything again and again, but at the end of the day, that's the result of some finely tuned levels that demand diligence and scrutiny from the player. It's a tough game that doesn't let up. Beyond that, it's also got an excellent soundtrack, some humorous voice acting, and hilarious line delivery. The points lost are, of course, for its decision to derail itself with time-related challenges, though at the moment I haven't experienced too many of them. It's the sort of thing that makes it feel like the game is just trying too much, especially when they're already constantly introducing new mechanics and combinations to utilize. There's already a refreshing variety without it, and the fact that it's at odds with its core gameplay makes it a questionable inclusion. Otherwise, while the game can be incredibly frustrating from time to time, it's unbelievably rewarding when you overcome a challenge that caused you so much grief in the past. Overall, it's just a pretty strong title. Thank you everyone for watching, and special thanks to NoClip for the efforts placed into making this game. This isn't a genre of game you see explored all too often anymore, and though I typically don't enjoy the games within it, you guys managed a refreshing enough twist to keep me hooked. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with next. Until next time, remember that failure is not the worst case scenario, to go on with your bad selves and stay awesome.